I said it without breathing, like if I paused even for a second, my courage would disappear. I need a baby. If not, I'll lose everything. The words echoed in the silent room. The city lights outside the window blurred through my tired eyes, but her face remained sharp, unreadable. She stood near the glass, arms folded, watching the world below like she was deciding the fate of strangers instead of mine. For years, I had been the man who controlled outcomes. Contracts, companies, futures. And yet here I was, reduced to one impossible demand by a dying legacy. She finally turned around. Then meet my condition, she said calmly. Tonight. My heart skipped, not from desire, but fear. I knew her well enough to understand that when she said condition, it never meant something simple. You know this isn't that kind of problem, I said quietly. This is about inheritance. About my father's will. And this is about my life, she replied. Her name was Alina. Once my wife. Then my stranger. 5 years ago, we had signed divorce papers in a room colder than this one. Not because we stopped loving each other, but because love had failed to give us the one thing my family demanded, an heir. My father was a titan in the pharmaceutical world. Ruthless, traditional, obsessed with bloodlines. When doctors confirmed that I couldn't have children naturally, his disappointment turned into quiet punishment. He never blamed me openly, but Alina became the silent target. She endured whispers, prayers, treatments, blame that wasn't hers. Until one night, she left without screaming, without breaking anything. Just gone. Now, fate had dragged me back to her door. The will is clear, I continued. If I don't have a child within a year, everything goes to the board. The company, the foundation, even the hospitals we built. And you think I should save it? She asked. After what it cost me. I swallowed. I'm not asking for love. I'm asking for help. She laughed, not loudly, not bitterly. Just tired. Men like you always come back when they're desperate, she said. But you never ask what it costs the woman. I remembered the hospital corridors. The needles. The nights she cried silently beside me while I pretended to sleep. I know I failed you, I said. But this child won't be for me alone. It will secure thousands of jobs. Free medicine for millions. My father's empire. Built on control, she interrupted. Just like our marriage. Silence returned. Then she walked toward me slowly, stopping just a step away. My condition isn't physical, she said. Not in the way you're thinking. I looked up. You want a baby, she continued. Fine. But tonight, you stay here. No lawyers. No contracts. No pressure. What does that prove? I asked. It proves whether you see me as a solution, or as a human being. Her condition was simple, and devastating. You'll listen, she said. To everything you never wanted to hear. That night, we sat across from each other on the floor, backs against the couch, like two people starting a war with memories instead of weapons. She spoke about loneliness. About how every treatment felt like a failure stamped onto her body. About how my silence hurt more than my father's cruelty. About how she loved me even while packing her bags. I wanted to interrupt, to explain, to defend myself. But I didn't. Hours passed. The city slept. And something inside me finally broke, not loudly, but honestly. I thought being strong meant not showing pain, I said. I didn't know it meant leaving you alone in yours. She closed her eyes. For 1 year, she said finally, you will do everything my way. I frowned. Everything. You'll step away from the company. Publicly. You'll let the board panic. You'll move into my world, not as a CEO, but as a man with nothing guaranteed. And the baby? I asked. She looked at me then. Really looked. We won't force life into existence, she said. If it happens through medical science, respect, and choice. IVF. Legal protection. No lies. And if it doesn't? I asked. Then you lose everything, she said softly. Just like I did. The condition terrified me more than failure. But I nodded. Because for the first time, the stakes weren't money. They were truth. That night, I slept on the same roof as the woman I once loved, but miles away emotionally, standing at the edge of a year that could either redeem me, or destroy me completely. And neither of us knew that the hardest part wasn't creating a child. It was surviving the past that would come alive before one could ever be born. The next morning didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like Judgment Day. I woke up on the narrow guest bed in Alina's apartment, staring at a ceiling fan that squeaked with every slow rotation. No silk sheets. No assistants waiting outside the door. No calendar full of meetings. Just silence, and the weight of the decision I had agreed to without fully understanding it. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already there, dressed simply, making coffee like this was any ordinary day. That calmness scared me more than anger ever could. "Good morning," I said. She nodded without looking at me. "Coffee's on the counter. Drink it fast. We're leaving in 30 minutes. "Where?" I asked. "The clinic," she replied. "You agreed to medical science, remember?" I did. But agreement felt theoretical last night. This morning, it was real. The fertility clinic was nothing like the luxurious private hospitals my family owned. It was modest, clean, human. Couples sat quietly, holding hands, fear and hope mixed on their faces. No one recognized me. For the first time in years, I was invisible. Alina filled out forms without hesitation. When the nurse asked us to confirm marital status, Alina paused. "Divorced," she said. The word hit harder than I expected. The doctor explained the process carefully: tests, timelines, probabilities. There were no guarantees. Even with science, nature still held the final vote. As we left, Alina stopped me near the door. "One more rule," she said. I sighed. "There's more. You don't touch me," she said calmly. No confusion. No comfort that feels like love but disappears when it's inconvenient. "That's not what I." "This is about trust," she interrupted. "And trust doesn't grow in mixed signals." I nodded again. It was becoming a habit. The announcement shook the industry within hours. My resignation, temporary but public, sent shockwaves through the board. Stock prices dipped. Analysts speculated. My father's name dominated headlines again, even though he'd been dead for 6 months. Men who once laughed with me on yachts now refused my calls. I moved into a small spare room at Alina's place. I learned how loud neighbors could be. How slow elevators felt. How long days stretched when you weren't commanding them. Alina worked as a counselor at a nonprofit supporting women facing infertility trauma. Watching her there was humbling. She was patient, present, everything I hadn't been. Weeks passed. Medical appointments became routine. Hormone schedules, mood swings, silent dinners. Sometimes, I caught her staring at me like she was searching for a man she once loved, and trying not to find him. Then one evening, everything cracked. I came home early to find a man sitting on her couch. He stood when he saw me. Tall, confident, familiar in a way that instantly irritated me. "Ethan," Alina said evenly. "This is Mark." Mark extended his hand. "Nice to finally meet you." I ignored it. "Finally." Alina sighed. "Mark is my friend. And my lawyer." "Lawyer? For what?" I asked. "For me," she replied. "And for the child, if there is one." The room tightened around us. "You don't trust me?" I asked quietly. "I trust patterns," she said. "And your family taught me to protect myself." Mark cleared his throat. "Everything is standard. Custody clarity. Financial independence. No corporate pressure. So you think you'll take the child and walk away?" I snapped. "No," Alina said. "I think your world will try to." That night, anger won. I accused her of planning against me. She accused me of never standing between her and my power-hungry legacy. Words sharpened. Voices rose. Years of silence exploded. "You only came back because you were cornered," she shouted. "And you agreed because part of you still cares." I shot back. Silence fell like broken glass. She turned away. Care doesn't erase damage. I left the apartment that night. Not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like destroying whatever fragile progress we had made. I sat in my car for hours, staring at my phone, realizing how empty my contacts were without authority attached to my name. The next morning, I got the call. Alina had collapsed at work. I rushed to the hospital, not as an owner, not as a CEO, but as a man terrified of losing the one person who still mattered. The doctor pulled me aside. Her body's under stress, he said. Emotionally and physically. If this continues, the IVF process may have to stop. Stop. The word echoed like a sentence. I walked into her room. She looked small, vulnerable, nothing like the composed woman who had set impossible conditions. I'm sorry, I whispered. Her eyes opened slowly. I don't need apologies, she said faintly. I need peace. I took her hand, then stopped, remembering the rule. She noticed. You can hold my hand, she said. I didn't say I wanted to be alone forever. Tears burned my eyes. For the first time, I realized this wasn't about a baby anymore. It was about becoming someone worthy of being a father. Outside the room, Mark waited. There's something you should know, he said. My chest tightened. What? There's a clause in your father's will, he continued. One that activates if the child is conceived, but not born. The floor seemed to tilt. What clause? I asked. Mark met my eyes. In that case, the entire empire transfers immediately. No appeal. The system was designed for certainty, not hope. And suddenly, the risk wasn't losing everything. It was losing her, and still paying the price. The clause didn't sleep. Neither did I. For days after Mark revealed it, my mind replayed my father's voice, cold, precise, obsessed with control even from the grave. He had built an empire on certainty, and now I understood, the will was never about family. It was about obedience. Produce an error be erased. Even hope itself had been weaponized. Alina recovered physically, but something inside her had shifted. She moved slower, thought deeper, smiled less. One evening, as rain traced thin lines down the windows, she sat across from me at the small dining table. We need to talk, she said. I nodded. I know. No, she replied. You don't. Because I'm not talking about the company. Or the will. Or your father. My hands clenched. I'm talking about me, she continued. And about the child. I waited, afraid to breathe. I don't want to live my life as someone's solution, she said quietly. Not yours. Not his. Not society's. I don't see you that way, I said instantly. I know, she replied. That's what makes this harder. She reached into her bag and placed an envelope on the table. Medical reports. Updated ones. The IVF worked, she said. I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Every sound, rain, traffic, my heartbeat, collapsed into silence. I didn't tell you earlier because I needed to decide something first, she added. And now I have. I looked at her, hope and terror colliding inside me. I'm walking away from the process, she said. Legally. What? I stood up. Alina, why? Because that clause, she said. If anything happens to this child, miscarriage, medical complication, you lose everything instantly. My stomach dropped. And I refuse to let my body be the trigger for your destruction. You're not a trigger, I said. You're the reason I'm still standing. She shook her head. You don't see it yet. But you're still negotiating with fear. She took a breath. I've filed papers, she continued. I'm removing your name from any inheritance-based claim. The child will be mine. No empire. No leverage. You can't just. I can, she interrupted gently. And I already have. Anger rose, not at her, but at the system that had cornered us into this nightmare. You think I care about the company more than you? I asked. She looked up then, eyes shining. I think you're finally learning not to. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called an emergency board meeting. The room was filled with men who had once bowed to my presence. Now they watched me like predators sensing weakness. I'm invoking Clause 7, I said. Murmurs erupted. You can't be serious, one of them said. You're stepping away permanently. Yes, I replied. Effective immediately. You're handing over everything. I'm choosing to. They argued. Threatened. Reminded me of legacy, history, power. I stood. My father believed blood created ownership, I said. I believe responsibility creates worth. I walked out without looking back. The news broke within hours. Headlines called it madness. Analysts predicted collapse. Social media mocked me. He lost his empire for a woman who might not even stay. But I didn't feel lost. I felt free. Months passed. I took a job at one of the nonprofit clinics Alina worked with. No title. No special treatment. Just work. Real work. One evening, she found me cleaning up after a long day. You didn't have to give it all up, she said. I smiled. I know. I wanted to. She didn't reply. But she stayed. The pregnancy wasn't easy. There were scares. Nights in hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Each time, I held her hand. No rules, no conditions, just presence. One night, as she slept, Mark pulled me aside. The board is panicking, he said. They want you back. Full control. No air clause. I shook my head. Too late. Why? He asked. Because the first time I chose love, I said, everything else became optional. The child was born just before dawn. A girl. When the nurse placed her in Alina's arms, I saw something in her face I had never seen before, peace. She's perfect, Alina whispered. I didn't cry. I broke. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the board. The empire had stabilized. New leadership. My father's shadow finally fading. Alina read the letter, then looked at me. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I already have everything. She hesitated, then spoke. I never promised we'd be the same again. I know, I said. I don't want the same. She smiled softly. Good, she said. Because this time, we're choosing, not surviving. Years later, people would still argue about the man who walked away from billions. But I would wake up every morning to a small hand gripping my finger. And a woman who once said, meet my condition first tonight. Who had unknowingly given me the only condition that ever mattered. Become human first. Everything else can wait.